So what is Paul doing in Romans 3, 1-8? He asks the question, first of all, a macro level question, if we can call it that. Has the unfaithfulness of Israel proven to be a detriment to God's ultimate purposes? They've been commissioned, they've been called to be lights to the world, as in the end of Romans 2, and yet they've been unfaithful in that task. Is that a problem for God and for God's purposes? And Paul addresses that not in this section. He leaves that for Romans 9-11, where he says, no, this is not detrimental. In fact, God uses this for his purposes. Paul then moves to another level. We might call it a micro level. If we take the same ingredients, that being unfaithfulness is not a problem to God's ultimate purposes, and apply that to our own lives, then don't we have a skewed theology? Isn't there something wrong with what Paul is peddling as in his gospel? And Paul says, no, we're not to mix these two levels of thinking. So you can't say, if Israel's been unfaithful and that's not a problem to God's purposes, then why doesn't the same apply to me in my own life? Paul says that doesn't work. These are two different levels of thinking. And it's the second aspect, the micro level of how this applies to my own life, that Paul addresses in Romans 6, where he talks about the need not to sin and not to be slaves of sin. The issues may overspill into the rest of Romans 3 as well, because if Israel has been unfaithful to her task, God has worked in a different way through Christ, and possibly through the faithfulness of Christ, who himself becomes the means whereby the Gentiles are enlightened and saved. So Romans 3, 1-8 has various components that relate to other sections within the letter of Romans.